Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi, and today we have a bit of a challenge ahead of us because in front of me here you can see I have the rather battered remains of a vintage Masters of the Universe Skeletor, and I thought it'd be quite fun to see if we could actually save this figure and get him back on display. But it's going to be quite a lot of work, so let's just get on with the project and see what can be done. Hopefully by the end of this video we will have a nice displayable Skeletor. So what have we here? Well, this is the battered remains of a vintage Masters of the Universe Skeletor. This was very kindly sent to me by John. You'll see the unboxing of that over on toy-polloi too, and he said that it was a failed project. And as you can see, what's happened is he has spray painted it black, and yeah, it's in a pretty sort of rough state. So what I want to do today is to remove all of the paint and get this figure back together again and try and make him look like a really nice displayable Skeletor. We've got quite a few pieces here, quite a few spare pieces. We've got a couple of sets of legs, one with paint on, but we've only got one body, and we have a few pairs of arms to choose from, and there's actually a couple of pretty reasonable Skeletor heads. So yeah, we've got a lot of bits to choose from. The main issue is going to be this body, because I want to get all of the paint off that and then we'll see what it looks like underneath. If you've watched my old video called the Ultimate Action Man Restoration Challenge, you'll know that .4 brake fluid is the way to get old paint off like this. So I'm going to go and get a tub of that and we'll start soaking, and hopefully we'll be able to remove most of this paint and then see what the figure is like underneath. I'm actually hoping we can save the head as well, because that's also been spray painted. It looks like underneath it's in pretty reasonable conditions. So yeah, I'm hoping we can get the paint off of that as well, but only time will tell. So let me go and get some brake fluid and we'll start soaking these pieces and see what can be done to save this poor chap. So here I have some .4 brake fluid, and this is just in a plastic pot, which makes it easier to sort of deal with and easier to submerge the pieces of the figure. With Skeletor, ideally I'd like to not sort of dunk the whole body in, because there is a spring inside for the waste mechanism, but in this instance I don't think there's any option. I'm going to have to sort of dunk the whole thing in, and I will try and clean it out and dry it out as best I can so that that spring doesn't rust. And also, before I put this in, I'm going to be removing his head, because I think that will just make it easier when it comes to cleaning the paint off. So let's quickly remove Skeletor's head. Just give it a gentle twist. That should come out. There we go. These figures have a little neck post in. You can actually get away with removing this when you put the head back on, but for now I will leave that in. So we can just go ahead and put this in the brake fluid, and I'm going to leave it in for maybe 30 minutes and then do a test and start sort of scrubbing to see what of this paint will come off. So we'll put the legs in first. Those should just drop to the bottom. The head may end up floating, so I might need a screwdriver or something just to push it down. It may sink, and then we've got the body as well, which I think will sink by the time all of the brake fluid has gone inside. Yeah, that's just going to gently sink, and I'm going to leave that now for 30 minutes, and then we'll come back to it and start scrubbing and cleaning and see how much of the paint actually comes off. Okay, it's now been about half an hour, so we'll give it a first go and see how much of this paint comes off. I've got a few tools here to help me. I've got an old toothbrush, which is very good for sort of brushing some of the paint off, and I've got some of these plastic tools that you can get for opening up mobile phones. In fact, I've got a whole pot of them. They are incredibly useful. These are sort of just tools for various mobile phone repairs. They're very cheap to buy. I think they cost about £3 for a whole box of them. But they are also very good at gently scraping paint off things, because they are plastic. They don't damage the plastic underneath. So we're going to be using those, and also bits of kitchen towel just to see what paint we can remove. So let's get going. I will remove some of these pieces and we'll see what happens. I think we'll start with a leg, because that's possibly going to be the easiest part to get the paint off, and just see what happens. Okay, as you can see, that is actually coming off really well. Just a little bit of scraping there and most of the paint is shifting. So I'm going to move on to the body and see how that is going. But it's really hopeful when you start to see things like this, and it just improves straight away. It looks messy because it's really greasy, so all the little paint flecks are sticking. But if I give that a quick wash, most of that will come off. So yeah, that is really pleasing. Let's give it a go on the body and see what happens with that. So let me just fish that out of the brake fluid. We'll have to let this one drain as well because it's going to be filled up with oil. So you can just see that there. The brake fluid is now dripping out of it. So I'll just empty that first and then we'll give it a go and see what happens. Okay, as you can see, that is starting to go. I think I need to leave this for possibly a bit longer in the brake fluid, but you can see it is starting to make a difference. We are getting somewhere. So yeah, maybe another half hour to an hour in the brake fluid and we'll try this again. It's now an hour later and I've actually had some good progress. The paint on the Skeletor head really came off pretty easily. There's still a few little marks on it, but the overall effect is very nice indeed. I was expecting the paint underneath to be a bit damaged because I'm guessing that's why it was spray painted in the first place, but yeah, it's not really too bad at all. All of the little bits of damage on that can be touched up, so we are getting somewhere. One of the 4 pieces is now free from paint, so let's work on the other bits and see if we can get those looking as good as this piece does. Fair amount of scraping later and you can see I'm actually starting to get somewhere. We've got more blue than black now, both on the legs and on the body. So I'm going to take these downstairs and give them a quick wash in the sink and try and get some of the sort of flakes off, and then we'll see what we're left with. At the moment there's so many sort of loose flakes on it, it's actually quite hard to see which bits are still attached and which bits aren't. So a quick wash in some hot soapy water and then we can start doing these sort of defined bits, but I think we've got the bulk of the mess off. We're really starting to get somewhere with this figure now. You see I've got most of the paint off the front of it. There's just a few odd little flecks which I think I'm just going to have to leave because they're sort of really in the grooves and the details on his chest, and there's a few tiny little bits of paint left on the copyright information on the back there which I'm slowly picking out with my pin tool. So this is a pin and an old paintbrush. I can just about get that in there and start to pick those out, but it's a really sort of laborious job, so I may end up sort of leaving a few bits just as a sort of remnants and reminder as to what this figure once was. Likewise, the arm posts there, there's no point in me cleaning the paint off those, because by the time we put the arms on like that, you can't see the fact there was paint on them, so he's looking pretty good like that. We have one tiny issue to fix, which is sometimes when you put sort of darker plastics in the brake fluid, it tends to make them go a little bit sort of frosty in colour. You can see there's just a little bit of white blooming on that, but we can reverse that very easily. All you need is some Vaseline, so I'm just going to take some Vaseline here and rub it over the blooming areas on the plastic and let it soak in overnight, and that will take away that sort of white blooming, and in the morning we can remove what's left of the Vaseline and this black plastic will look as good as new again. So it's just something that happens sometimes when you are removing paint from plastic. So I'm just going to leave that overnight, and then we can sort of get on with actually putting this figure back together. There's going to be some paint repairs to do. As you can see, his head has got a few marks on it, although I might actually swap this head out because we do have some better ones in that box. And then the feet, I've got most of the black paint off, but I was intending to repaint the feet anyway, so we just need to give a bit of a paint touch up on those. But as you can see, we've gone from a sort of an undisplayable figure painted in black spray paint to one that's starting to look pretty displayable. So let's leave this overnight to let the Vaseline work, and then we'll put him back together, finish all the paint applications, and find some accessories for him.
Toyannoi. That is incorrect. Try again.
It's now the next day, and as you can see, the Vaseline has had time to sort of soak into the plastic. And if we remove the excess just with a tissue here, all of that sort of white blooming that was on the surface of the black part of Skeletor's pelvis has now gone, and it looks as good as new. Essentially, the Vaseline sort of soaks back into the plastic, so the .4 brake fluid sort of leaches out some of the plasticizers, I guess, or something in the plastic, and the Vaseline puts it back in. So if you ever have blooming left after you've done a bit of the sort of paint removal using the .4 brake fluid, Vaseline is the answer. Put it on, let it soak overnight, and it will go back to how it should have looked originally. So there we go, we've now got the top of Skeletor. It's looking pretty good. I put a head on him. This is the one that just has a minor little chip there, so we can touch the paint up. Now let's reattach his legs. I've got some He-bands here. It's a very simple process which I've shown many times. So we'll get the legs on, then we can start touching up the paint and actually putting him all back together. An entire video on retouching the paint on Skeletor, so do go and check that out. I'll give you all the paint colours for his face and his boots, and I'm just going to be sort of redoing that myself today. I keep notes of most of the paints that I use, so this is my sort of notepad of paints for various toys. So I've gone to the Skeletor page, I found the paints that I need, and I'm now just going to mix that up and do a little bit of touch up on him. His face, as I say, has just got a couple of little scratches on it, and I need to repaint the boots completely because there's still a fair bit of black paint on them, so it would just be easier just to paint those completely. And then I'm going to put a clear top coat on. I have a satin varnish, which is a Vallejo colour, and that will give it the same sort of sheen that the original paint had. So let's get all of this painted up, and then we can put some armour on him and see what he looks like. paint has now had time to dry, and I've applied the top coat to it, so you can see the boots are looking really nice and purple again, and I've fixed the sort of minor marks that were on his face. The last thing we need to do is to put some accessories on him, so I've had a sort of rummage around and I've got all the accessories needed for Skeletor. So let's get these onto the figure. The easiest way to get the sort of armour piece on is actually just to remove one arm, and you can still see all of the paint underneath it. So this is the figure that I started out with. We can just drop that over the top of him. Taking one arm off just means that it's easier to sort of clip around the body. We can clip that together on the back, and then we'll just drop his arm back on like so. There you go, he's starting to really look like Skeletor now. We have his little skirt piece here. These are generally very chewed, the ones that I have. Someone's always chewed the little belt part of it, but you can get them to fit. And once it's on the figure, it doesn't matter what the back of it looks like. So just clip that in place, and then of course he needs his Havoc staff, so we put that in his hand, and then we have his sword, which I generally just clip under his armour because I think that's a nice way of storing it. And there we go, that is the finished Skeletor. So as you can see, we now have a really nice displayable Skeletor. It's been a fair amount of work, and right at the start I wasn't sure what he would end up looking like, but with a lot of cleaning and a lot of paint removal and just generally tidying him up, bit of paint repair, we've got a really nice displayable figure, and one that I will be happy to put with the rest of my Skeletor army. Some people would say that it's probably not worth all of this effort because you can just buy a naked Skeletor for a few pounds, but to me that's not the point. I've been given a whole load of broken parts and I know that I can fix them, and with a little bit of effort I've been able to make this really nice figure and saved it from being thrown away. And I've still got a few extra pieces here in this box, so if I find some more broken Skeletors I can repair those as well. And it's been a challenge, and that's what this is all about for me, a challenge to restore and repair a toy, and what I think most people would have just chucked away I have turned into a lovely looking figure. So hopefully this video has been of interest to you. If it has, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.